everyone, and welcome from wherever you're joining us today. Um, we often hear that uncertainty is a signal to pause, but in the Middle East, um, history tells a different story. While headlines focus on volatility, the most resilient companies are being built right now. Welcome to our monthly series where we move past the noise to give founders and investors the real world playbook for our region. Today, we're tackling how to continue building through uncertainty. We aren't just looking at how we survive these shifts, but how to use them as a window for long term growth. Joining us all the way from Palo Alto to lead this conversation is our partner at Shuruk, Dr. Bilal Balouch. Bilal sits at the forefront of global investments and brings a unique perspective on why investments shouldn't withdraw during these periods, but rather lean in to foster the next cohort of great companies. But before we hand off to Bilal, let's watch a quick recap of the past 26 days since the US Israel Iran war has begun.
United States and Israel are airstrikes across Iran.
What's happening here right now
Iran.
is having an impact in the Middle East and beyond.
Strait of Hormuz is now closed. Now, this is an important waterway with about 20% of the world's oil consumption passing through this narrow curve.
Saudi Aramco says the longer the disruption to oil exports went on, the more drastic the global impact would be.
Dubai's Civil Aviation Authority temporarily suspended flights at Dubai International as a precautionary measure to ensure the safety of passengers and staff.
The global economic crisis sparked by the war with Iran just got worse after Israel reportedly attacked the world's biggest natural gas field in Iran. The facility is shared with Qatar, which called the strike dangerous and irresponsible.
Selling off again right across Asia with falls in most stocks. Here in South Korea, it was, of course, the worst. It was a holiday yesterday, so in many ways the Kospi playing at catch-up at a massive fall, more than 7% by the end of the day.
Stocks drop and oil and gas prices soar as Israel and Iran target key energy facilities. Qatar reports extensive damage from Tehran's attack on the site, housing the world's largest LNG export plant.
Thank you. And that on the back end, Bilal, let's jump straight in. For the founders tuning in today who are navigating this complex landscape, what are the key takeaways you want them to walk away with?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for Tico and the Shuruk team for organizing this. I think sessions like this, especially during as we navigate this crisis together, are very important, and hopefully we'll be doing more of these over the next few days and weeks. Look, I think first and foremost, it's important to acknowledge what's happening and what's going on. I think we don't all build businesses and invest in businesses in a vacuum. We have team members. Those team members, especially in the region, are often decentralized. Those team members have got families, responsibilities beyond just the work that they are committed to and the missions that they are committed to. So I think first and foremost, the safety of your people, your team, clarity over what's going on, separating out signal from noise, news cycles and headlines from actually what's impacting us on a day-to-day basis and impacting our personal lives and our professional lives. That is utmost important for our founders and for companies that are building. So if you're a business leader, if you're a founder out there, first and foremost, get to know what's happening with your team members. What are they experiencing, and how you as a leader, as someone running an organization, can help them with clarity and help them with navigating this crisis. So I think that's first and foremost. I think the second is, and this is something we'll be going deeper into today, is that businesses not only continue and develop and grow during moments like this, they can often thrive, right? And that doesn't just mean directly in terms of specific industries and sectors that can actually grow during geopolitical crises, depending, of course, on what kind of crisis we're talking about. But they can also survive in terms of organizational muscle. These are exactly the times when founders can learn how to really manage their burn and their spend in ways that perhaps they are not tested in during peacetime. These are exactly the times and moments during which founders and leaders understand which team members are capable of really pushing through not only their skill set, but taking on new ones. These are exactly the moments where you get to test your customers and the endurance of your customers with your product. And the list goes on. So use this not only as a moment of slowdown and as a moment of challenge, but as a moment of opportunity. And look, finally, I'd say that this can also be a period of innovation, right? We've seen businesses over the last 25 years in crises such as the global financial crisis, the Eurozone crisis, COVID, regional and local conflicts really emerge in terms of pivoting their businesses and adapting new business models. War and geopolitical tensions and other conflicts and crises bring about also a new normal for what to build and when to do it. We're seeing this in our own portfolio across logistics and lending and other products. And so I think that will be the case across different businesses and sectors. And so leaning into that as a leader, as a founder, and trying to identify those moments of innovation, I think is going to be key. So I'll stop there, and of course we'll go deeper into a lot of this throughout the hour.
Love that, Bilal. I think before we dive into the details here, I would like to remind everybody who's joining us live on our social pages that you can jot your comments and questions in the comment section below, and we'll try to reach out and cover as many of these as possible during the next in the next 40 minutes or so. But Bilal, you've touched a little bit on this. But one of the questions we've received from the audience was, should founders slow down or keep building during periods of regional uncertainty? I.e., do founders think about this as a place for momentum, hiring, and expansion when probably the macro environment doesn't feel unstable?
Yeah. Look, I think there's a famous framework by Daniel Kahneman, who's a behavioral economist, wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. And there's a lesson in that book for all leaders, whether it's in business, politics, or beyond, that sometimes you need to slow down your thinking to speed up your execution. And I think that's the framework that a lot of our founders and a lot of those of you out there building businesses need to adapt for this current environment. Why? Because there is an asymmetry of information. There is a very fast moving and adapting situation with multiple different actors and countries and states involved. There is a lot of posturing. Sometimes it may seem as though things are calming down, but in reality they don't. At others, there may be inflammatory remarks in the geopolitical arena, but things may feel like that they're calming down. Markets often react really well to geopolitical tensions and price it in really well. So that would be one signal that I would look at. But by and large, slowing your thinking down to speed up your execution means think about those key levers that allow you to not just build your business, but adapt to the current environment, i.e. the safety of your team and how is your team performing, the nature of your burn and your capital requirement needs, the relationship between your product and your customers, these first principles that are so key for our businesses, whether it's in wartime or peacetime, are so critical. And only by thinking slowly through them, day by day, week by week clip, can you then execute in a focused way. So to answer the question, I think businesses should keep building. Periods of regional uncertainty demand the top businesses and the top founders to step up. But that's not to say that there won't be challenges and potentially existential challenges for businesses that are even otherwise doing great. But you can navigate them if you can slow down your thinking, bring in the right partners, your investors, your customers, even the regulators in your particular industry, and gain from them the support and the knowledge you need to get through this.
And I don't believe in these times it's only affecting founders. I think follow-up question that we actually saw multiple times from founders who are tuning in to the webinar is, are investors deploying capital, in such times, or are funds kind of becoming more cautious right now? What's your take?
The short answer is that the investors, certainly in our industries, are still deploying capital. Founders out there are used to not just raising from VCs, they've raised from governments, they've raised from foundations, there are grants, there are credits. There's so many ways to be able to not just raise cash, but raise cash equivalents. I can mainly speak for the VC community. Those of us that are investing in the region are not going to slow down. In fact, I would argue that this is exactly the moment where regional VCs step up, and regional VCs are going to help anchor and support companies on their home turf. Now, there will be a lot more selection that takes place. There's going to be a lot more focus on where we can actually add value and support. Naturally, there will be time taken to complete deals. All of that is a natural consequence of the situation that we're in. But are we still deploying capital? The answer is yes. Are we becoming cautious of deploying? No. But are we becoming cautious of the kind of business models that we're going to really double down on? Absolutely. But I would argue that that's a net positive, right? When you're navigating a new normal, you have to have the foresight to be able to look around the corner and think through which kind of business models are going to not just survive, but perhaps thrive in the new normal that will be created by this geopolitical environment. And that is an interesting opportunity, not just for us, but also for founders. So I would classify it less as caution and more as being thoughtful about where will opportunity lie and where will it thrive after the crisis. Now, what I would say is that over the last few years, we've seen more and more interest from international capital into our region, which is great. Not in and of itself because it's coming from abroad, but because you always want outside validation from other markets about how you're building. And while I think that has been very welcome, I do think that will slow down and even come to a halt over the next at least 12 to 18 months. Now, thankfully, the upside is our market hasn't been dependent on outside capital, and neither of our companies. Moreover, certainly in the last 6 to 12 months, we've seen a lot more growth capital from the region itself come into our market. Indeed, at Shuruk, we recently launched our own $200 million late-stage fund that is backed by QIA. So I think we're in a strong position. I fully expect sovereign wealth funds, government grants, family offices, sort of the more unorthodox funding resources for startups to really step up and not only support the funds that they are LPs in, but perhaps even come in as direct investors. Because one thing we all agree on is that our market remains one of the most exciting in the world, and we all have a stake in making sure that not only that it navigates this crisis, but comes out on top.
And I think this is a great segue to, as founders navigate the fundraising environment, how should companies and founders manage runway and cash when things might not necessarily be predictable from an investment standpoint, and until kind of family offices and other institutions step up to cover the gap, if there is, what practical steps can founders take to extend that runway without kind of killing their growth?
Yeah. The responsibility of any founder, any leader is often to have this psychological dualism, right? Which is you want to, one, at the same time, remain focused on supporting your founders, being positive, remaining upbeat, remaining clear on information. But at the same time, Tico, you also have to have a pretty hardened mental framework focused on survival, right? Survival is what buys you the right to participate in the recovery. And the leaders that survive really get that. So that means starting by being very honest about your numbers. Ask yourself the question, at my current burn, how many months do I have until the account hits zero? Not a range, not a best case, the exact date. I think most founders, perhaps navigating a crisis, don't know that number quite as precisely as I'm suggesting they should. So the first job is to really be firm and fully aware about that gap and what needs to be done and what you need to commit to navigate it. Then comes a potentially harder question when it comes to your team and your product and your business, which is, what is the minimum monthly burn at which the company can still do the one thing that matters most to my customers? That is the number that becomes your target. And then you have to figure out and identify your immediate, medium term and long term plan. And immediate means this week, right? Pause every non-committed spend, whether that's subscriptions, contracts, travel. Pause it, evaluate it afterwards. Immediately, right now, call your largest vendors, ask them for ways in which you can do payment deferrals, ways in which they can help you, support you, credits and otherwise. Look at your receivables. Is there any customer that owes you money that you haven't chased? Chase it today. That very tactical, immediate focus, all the way from there to something that's a lot more long-term in terms of, can you restructure founder salaries? Can you explore non-dilutive capital? There are certainly in the UAE many programs around this, right? Dubai RDI grants, incentives from Abu Dhabi Investment Office, Hub 71, one of our partners and institutions that we have a great relationship with. There are so many organizations out there that are ready and willing to make that support. Focus on it and get connected, and your investors should be helping you with that. The ecosystem will help you with that. If you don't know how to get to them, ask us. We're here not just to help our own founders, but the entire ecosystem. So these are some of the steps that I would suggest.
I want to leverage what you said there on kind of supporting founders in the ecosystem, wider ecosystem, and kind of talk about a little bit of how do you keep your team as a founder? How do you keep your team focused and motivated when the entire news cycle is dominated by geopolitical tension today?
Mm.
What leadership approaches could help teams stay productive and emotionally resilient until we kind of pass this crisis?
Yeah. So I will lean on the experience that even not just our founders have, but we at Sharuk are also experiencing, right? Which is, you need to get to the bottom of what, before you can even think about communication, is, what's going on and what is your team actually concerned about and worried about? And it does come down to a handful of things. One of them, which I mentioned at the top of the hour, is, am I physically safe here? Is my family? That's really around personal safety, right? The other is around economic security. What's going to happen to this company I work with? What's going to happen if I get laid off? What happens to my visa? What happens to my ability to stay in the country? It can go from those very immediate and practical concerns to much larger questions about mission coherence, right? Is what we're doing important now? Does it even matter? That's the environment in which you need to navigate your team. And I think with most things in life, it comes down to what you communicate and how you communicate it. These are fundamentally existential questions for your team members, for your employees, for your vendors, part-time, full-time. And not mincing words and having clarity over what's happening is key. And that requires leaders to be calm, but also specific. No founder or business leader really knows what's going to happen with this conflict, specifically what's happening around us right now. That is the domain of the corridors of power in Tehran, Washington, Tel Aviv, and even, quite frankly, there, having just spent the last few weeks in Washington, even there's likely confusion. So any suggestion that anyone knows something or knows how things will unfold is not the right message to your teams. What is the right message to your teams is to over-communicate on a daily, weekly basis. Acknowledge the situation, name it. Don't dance around it. Talk very explicitly about facts that you can and have verified, and separate that out from what you don't know and what's in the news on a daily basis and even on social media and being shared around. Inform your team that you're monitoring the situation and that you're trying to get the best information that you can. And oftentimes that's not just by having access to the right network and contact, but it's also about getting up to speed and educated. Every founder, I think, even prior to this crisis, needs to learn about geopolitical variables, understand them, read about them. It's now your responsibility as a leader to factor that in and price that in, not only when there's a crisis, but outside of that too. And if you don't know where to start, we're here for that. We're probably one of the few funds that have got a leadership team that understands these issues quite deeply. And if there's anything that we can do to help and support and guide on that, we will.
I want to stay with the topic of communication and great advice on how to communicate to the rest of the team to keep the morale high in such volatile times. But what would you advise on how can founders communicate with investors, customers, partners that they work in during such times? What messages can help maintain trust across their stakeholders without kind of sounding defensive or alarmist or not necessarily confident of the times to come?
Yeah, no, great question. I think the first and foremost is frequency, right? So during peacetime, you can have monthly all hands, even quarterly meetings with your customers or stakeholders. You can even get away with just sending an email. In moments like this, any absence or vacuum of communication is itself a message, and it's a negative one. So I would start with right now, short, weekly, honest, personal letters that you're writing to your key stakeholders, investors, customers. I've seen some even send around honest, sort of 2 to 3 minute videos, voice notes. The more personal, in my opinion, these messages are, the more personalized they are, the more likely they are to ally any fears or nervousness among your stakeholders. So I think frequency and warmth of communication is always key, first and foremost. I would also create a legitimate channel for people to ask questions they're actually afraid to ask. So this is more aimed at your team members rather than your stakeholders. But oftentimes team members don't raise their personal anxiety in an all hands or in a group forum. They need another mechanism, perhaps an anonymous form, perhaps a direct line to a senior team member, explicit permission in a small setting. Those kinds of smaller environments that are more personal and direct are key during these moments. And therein lies, I think, another important signal and message for founders and leaders, which is make yourself available in ways that perhaps you didn't previously. These are exactly the times where you need to step up and ensure that you are directly communicating in small groups, in individual ways with your teams and your stakeholders. I think next is really about communicating company risk from personal risk, and address both, yes, but ensure that you are staying really focused on your numbers and your goals and your North Star metrics and your KPIs to your stakeholders. This actually becomes a lot easier in a geopolitical environment, a geopolitical crisis environment specifically, because you have to return to first principles, right? What is the uptick in revenue? What is any risk or downside hit that your revenue has taken? Has there been any churn in your users? Have you lost any customers? Have you lost any team members in terms of going to different markets or resigning and leaving altogether? Are you in danger of any liquidity risk, any regulatory challenges? Separate that out from personal risk and personnel risk that you might be facing and challenge it and having to navigate. That requires a lot of emotional intelligence and maturity to separate out and treat differently. Sometimes, of course, they're related, but I think it will show that you are able to speak clearly and seriously during this period about what's happening with the business. And then I think the sort of overarching point here is be clear about your mission. Ultimately, what I want to hear as an investor, but also what I want to hear as a customer, is that you're continuing to build. There's going to be some changes, there's going to be some shifts, but that you're continuing to build and you're focused on the ultimate mission. Hearing that and the answer to that, it goes a long way to allowing me to get comfort on my investment and my capital that I have put behind you.
Bilal, I want to maybe entertain some of the questions that we received on LinkedIn. My apologies if we can't get the questions on the screen, but I will read them out for everyone here. But a question from Muhammad Hassan, and I think it goes back to communicating with stakeholders. Just a quick, takeaway, Bilal, on, what Muhammad is saying is the key question is how far and to what extent shareholders are willing to make personal sacrifices and commit their resources to support the company's growth and long-term successes. And I think it kind of alludes to, we are all in very different planes there. how do you make parties meet or understand each other a bit?
Look, I think sacrifices are a key part of the new normal when it comes to the kind of crisis that we're facing right now. That sacrifice can take many shapes and many forms. I can only speak to what we're doing at Shuruk. First and foremost, that sacrifice comes with our time, right? We are spending most of our time now not on event stages or fundraising for our funds or out there promoting our ecosystem and the success of our investments. We're out there spending all our time, morning, afternoon, night, for me, 2:30 a.m., focused on how we can help our founders. How can we help just by listening? How can we help in terms of renegotiating contracts? How can we help with regulators? How can we help with access to capital? All of that requires leveraging our team, our network, and all our relationships. I see it, it can be classified as a sacrifice. I see it more as our responsibility, quite frankly, to do that. I think beyond that, we also need to be very focused on how we're negotiating terms with founders, understanding about the environment in which founders are building, what kind of valuation founders will likely have to navigate through in this market. We have always been founder first, and that's not just a slogan that we put out there. That is fundamentally an ethos and a commitment to working with founders and making sure that our investments help them and support them, while also making sure that they are the best deals that we can find and identify and invest in for the sake of our LPs, whose capital that we have a responsibility to manage. Yeah. So that will continue. I think what emerges that's new, Tico, is we're all in this together. And we have a firm commitment to our ecosystem and to help it. So look, the sacrifices will happen on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. What I can tell you is that we're committed to being focused on what's happening in our market and our ecosystem right now. And we will make ourselves available to help and support however we can.
Thank you, Mohammed, for asking the question. I think there are a two-part question that Priya asked on LinkedIn. One is how to reach the Shuruk for support and guidance. Priya, obviously, please do reach out to visit our website, shuruk.com. You'll find a form that you can fill. That form goes directly to our investment team that gets seen on a daily basis. And, you could obviously submit and pitch your companies through that form. Obviously, reach out to us on social media. We're happy to take any of your questions directly. Second part of Priya's question is, what does Shuruk today invest in? Any business models that we're backing? Are business models that we're backing today different from when the war started?
Yeah. To your first question, Priya, exactly. We have many mechanisms through which you can reach out to us. Little known fact about me and my partners at Shuruk, we spend dedicated time actually screening all the messages we receive on social media. It may not happen every day or every few days, but we do it at a regular enough clips that we're able to respond to folks. So please keep those messages coming. We look forward to them. We learn a lot. And if we can't action, we will be explicit about that. It's too soon to tell which business models are going to be completely unearthed and birthed by this conflict. I think they will happen. I have a set of hypotheses around which industries those are, but I don't want to discuss those in this environment right now, because this is more about how we can support our founders in our portfolio and beyond and in the ecosystem right now. What I will say is that we remain bullish on the sectors we've always invested in, which is to say at the infrastructure level in finance, at the infrastructure level in deep tech, at the infrastructure level in software, where founders are building businesses and technology that can enable entire sectors to emerge and be disrupted. Those kind of bold ideas remain our core bread and butter, and that's who we want to hear from. I think it'll be more case by case when it comes to assessing whether a particular business model or an approach will be able to survive and navigate the current crisis. I wouldn't yet relegate or sideline an entire sector or industry as to whether it can survive or navigate this crisis. I think it's too soon to tell.
Beautifully said, Bilal. There's a question in the LinkedIn comments that actually does resonate with a lot of the questions that we've received from the audience prior to this webinar, which is about expanding across markets when geopolitical tensions are rising. So Najam Kishari is asking, he's preparing to enter the UAE healthcare market. He'd value our view on whether current conditions may disrupt entry, or is it, if it's the right time to proceed or not? Should startups focus more locally, double down on their core markets, or take it an opportunity to expand internationally?
Yeah. It's an excellent question from Najam. Look, first of all, it depends on where Najam is bringing his business from. But I would argue that the UAE is open for business. Sectors and industries are certainly getting hurt, some more than others. There's major bruising across the board, but that doesn't mean business has stopped. And the focus on digital transformation to actually help legacy assets and improve and make more productive the way in which business and outcomes are conducted, whether it's in healthcare, fintech, what have you. That focus, in fact, would actually increase and ramp up because of the crisis. So I think there's an argument to be made that if you are building a pretty tech-first business, that you can find significant opportunity here. For Najam's specific example of healthcare, in fact, I was just on a call yesterday with a pretty established UAE government entity that is looking at US healthcare companies that are still looking to come into the UAE, just because of the sheer nature of the focus from the government in the UAE, the regulators, and the focus in the healthcare industry to use technology. So especially in healthcare, I think that's the case. Now, to answer the question that is a lot broader than that, which is how does one think about cross-border expansion? I think there's 2-3 ways to think about that. One is at the level of, it's a big decision. It's a big decision in peacetime, let alone wartime. And making those big decisions when there's still uncertainty is something that I would be cautious about. So that's not just about market expansion. That would be about releasing a new product or hiring 2-3 new senior or C-suite level leaders. Any big decision, I would, again, going back to what I said at the top of the hour, slow down my thinking on and be really thoughtful about it. So that's at a sort of top level. However, if you have the capital support and the capital injection, and you see an opportunity to navigate into an adjacent market, especially if it's within our own region, and your product really lends itself to surviving and actually thriving in the current environment, then I think it's something worth exploring. I'm talking specifically about logistics or even financial lending or I think, we haven't got as many companies in this space, but
Cybersecurity.
healthcare being one example, cybersecurity, defense adjacencies. If you have an opportunity to go into a neighboring country during this period, I would. We tend to see less companies in our region that can jump regional expansion, sort of go from, the MENA region directly to Europe or Asia. But if that window opens up for you, start thinking about it. Nimbleness and agility is a key factor of leadership when it comes to navigating crisis. And if you see that opportunity, and specifically if your investors can help you with that, then it should certainly be on the sort of, the ideas board for you and your leadership team.
And I think rightfully said, Mustafa Karim in the comments said, uncertainty is part and parcel of doing business in general. But to that, Edward has a very, very good question. As you know, Bilal, some data centers have been attacked in the UAE and Bahrain. Do global investors still have strong desire in the AI infrastructure and kind of building data centers here in the MENA region? What have you been seeing lately?
Yeah, this is a big topic of discussion in capitals like London, Washington. I'm currently in Palo Alto right now. This is a big topic of discussion for founders and regulators and just observers across all those capitals, mainly because the UAE and Saudi and our friends in Qatar and across the region have done such a phenomenal job over the last few years in investing in data centers, both at home and abroad, and also signaling that they want to be the leaders at that sort of very key critical infrastructure level when it comes to AI. The short answer for Edward is that that's not going to change. In fact, I imagine, if I had to bet, that investment and that vision is only going to become a lot more hardened because of what we've seen happen over the last few weeks. However, that critical infrastructure, just like other critical infrastructures in energy, in food security, have become targets of war. So I think there's going to have to be some meaningful strategy and discussion from the powers that be and leadership across these countries on distribution of those data centers, protection of those data centers, partnerships around those data centers, both at home and abroad, the ways in which sovereign data, sovereign protection, sovereign cybersecurity is viewed and approached. I think a lot of this is going to be not rethought, because it's not as though these entities did not war game out what would happen if Iran or Israel or another regional actor or from abroad were to attack. What would happen if these data centers were seen as targets of that attack? This is not new for those decision makers, but of course it's a completely different ballgame once you experience it and go through it. So I think there will be changes to approach security framework, distribution, partnerships, but I think the focus on those investments as a way to diversify away from the energy economy, but also as a way to build a new future, I think that will absolutely remain.
Let's stay on this topic. We have a few questions to go through, but one of the questions we've received from the audience prior to the webinar is, what do the most resilient startups or companies that we've seen do differently during challenging times? Do they behave differently? Do they take strategic decisions that separate them from those who just survive?
We saw this a lot during COVID, Tico. If I was to sort of expand out, and one could argue a pandemic is also a kind of geopolitical crisis, especially when you frame it in terms of supply chain disruptions and return to work and vaccine
Yeah,
programs.
Abdul Latif in the comments is saying, bring back the 2021 hype, which is quite true.
You know, we saw founders during that period, and I was a founder during that period. I think it's important to remember that the fundamentals don't change, but focus and agility do. And founders during that period were very focused on what the fundamentals of their business were and how they were going to go around and execute on it. No new hires, maintaining burn, no new products, solidifying exposure and build within clients and within ICPs rather than logo expansion for the sake of it. Active communication, messaging, seeing market opportunities to potentially pivot your existing product set if the opportunity emerges. These kinds of attributes that, quite frankly, should always be there. It's like Sophocles' sword. When the crisis is in front of you, it focuses the mind. So I would say really it's about focus and agility. I don't think there is a secret out there that suddenly, you know, a founder has to put on an iron suit and turn into someone different. But I think the focus and the agility on what makes their business thrive, that is what separates out a crisis era founder from a non-crisis era founder. And while I'm suggesting that it doesn't require you to refashion yourself, unfortunately, not all leaders are capable of that or willing to do it.
Yeah, you're the author of the book When Ideas Matter. For those who haven't read Dr. Bilal's book, feel free to Google it. And I think the next question probably is tackling the when part. Is why do you think, from your experience and how much you've dove into the thesis of when do ideas matter, why do some of the most successful companies were built and born during difficult moments? What do you have to say for us on that matter?
Yeah. So one of the theses that I explore in that book, which is focused a lot more on governments, but organizations arguably are similar in all domains, is the variable of leadership. And I think over the last 50 to 100 years, we've increasingly de-emphasized leadership as a variable in organizational success. We tend to refer more to sort of structural factors in terms of, the very nature of the product itself, the market conditions in which that product emerges, the sort of sophistication of your tools and your technology, etc. And leadership is something we sort of relegate or sideline away to sort of, ephemeral things. But I think the reason why companies survive during crisis moments is down to leadership. If you think even in our industry, in finance, you think about the Great Depression, you think about the world wars, you think about revolutions, protest movements, geopolitical tensions, existential crises in places like Korea or the Middle East or even Cold Wars between the US and Russia. During all these moments, large institutions as well as small businesses survived because they had leaders and founders and management teams that knew how to stay calm, focused, communicative, and had the imagination to react and respond to the market when it presented an opportunity, either to expand their product set or to really ramp up customer outreach and rollout. And that level of imagination comes from leadership, comes from leaders who stay the course. Unfortunately, that's not everyone's domain. So you could be very strong technically, you could be very adept at knowing your market, your customer, But unfortunately, if you don't have the attributes to be able to look at this environment and price it in as risk today, but opportunity tomorrow, then unfortunately you won't survive. And part of that comes down to who you surround yourself with. Going back to the book that I wrote, it came down to leadership being informed by, in that scenario, cabinet ministers and the background and the experience of those that you have around you, and technical and political. In an organizational and startup context, that comes down to, are your investors showing up? What skill set do they bring to the table? On your management team, do you have a deep enough bench of technical expertise, commercial expertise? If not, how can you cultivate that within your existing team? These are the facets that create successful businesses during crisis moments.
You said something there are, investors showing up. And I think, I want to pull in a question from Mohammed Salim Quraishi, who's saying, are investments happening today in GCC? Are you seeing a slowdown? I certainly know at Shuruk, we're kind of doubling down at these moments, and we seize it as an opportunity to work with the best and to find the best deals. But what is the general sentiment that you see today in the market?
Yeah. Look, investors don't function in a vacuum, right? We are facing the same issues that founders and businesses and startups are facing. We have team members that, for personal reasons, have had to, move out and relocate to a different part of the country or to a neighboring country. We have to also look at the same alerts and the guidance from the government and the security establishment as to whether we can, come into office on a particular day or not, and that changes week by week. We're subject to the same global macro drivers. We also have our own stakeholders, our LPs, our founders, you all listening to this. So I think sometimes it's important that we recognize that we're all in this together, right? Now, that being said, and I mentioned this earlier on during the session, this is exactly when investors show up by not just helping and supporting their existing portfolio, which, to be very frank with you, is my number one priority right now. After that, or in conjunction with that, we want to find the best deals. And so long as founders continue to build, so long as founders continue to be inspired and be at the cutting edge of our economic growth and our economic story, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you, and we may be also slowing down our thinking to ensure we understand which sectors, which types of management teams, and which types of business models are really going to navigate this crisis and survive through it, and come at the other end and really thrive. But that does not slow down the pace of our deployment, which will continue unabated.
Yeah. Thank you, Bilal. One last question, but before that, Lucas is asking if we have recommendations for ex-founders that are thinking going into the VC space, and how do we get in touch with partners active in the area. Lucas, you can reach out to Bilal on LinkedIn, or reach out to me. Happy to kind of put you in touch with a few folks here and there. Thank you for dropping in a comment there. Thank you, Bassel, everybody who's tuning in on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Bilal, as we have a few minutes before we kind of wrap up, we started off with key takeaways that you want founders to take out of today's live. I want to end it with, what advice would you give founders today who are questioning whether this is the right moment to keep building or to start?
If we think about the most successful ecosystems today in the world, technology and otherwise, finance, energy, etc., not a single one of them in the last 100 years has come through an environment where they've only experienced peacetime or uninterrupted growth periods. Every single one, whether it's in the US, China, Europe, the Middle East, not a single one has had to. Not a single one has avoided geopolitical crises, regional crises, market shocks. Far worse, I would argue, in some cases than what we're seeing right now. And to a T, every single one of those ecosystems has come out on top and survived through it and improved. I think about the financial sector in the US. I think about the defense sector in Europe. I think about the tech ecosystem in China. These are all places that have faced geopolitical tensions, geopolitical crises. What matters is that your best and brightest remain and remain committed to the market. What matters is that capital remains committed to the market. And third, and perhaps most importantly, that the growth levers and the growth variables continue to be strong. And we have a region where, the overwhelming number of folks throughout MENA and South Asia are between 18 and 35. Mobile and internet penetration is still the fastest in the world. And a lesser discussed variable of curiosity and ambition to improve is there across all our markets. And no war can kill that in a matter of weeks. So I would say stay positive, over-communicate, look at the fundamentals, and understand that historically, ecosystems can and do emerge stronger out of these kinds of crises. And I am firmly committed and incredibly confident that all of us together will come out of this stronger.
A beautiful way to end this webinar with a beautiful smile all the way from Palo Alto. Thank you so much, Bilal, for stripping away the noise, giving us a clear-eyed look at what it actually takes to build when the ground is shifting. To our audience, the message I think is clear. Uncertainty isn't a reason to wait. It's probably a reason to get strategic. So if you missed any part of this session, the full replay will be available immediately on our LinkedIn and YouTube channels. We'll also be sharing a summary of Bilal's key takeaways and the questions that we've asked during today's webinar on our website on the Perspectives page later this week. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much all for joining us on our monthly series. We'll be back next month with more kind of real world playbooks. Until then, keep building, stay positive.